Here are the key themes for the short story Mother and Son by Iain Crichton Smith. Mother and Son explores three important themes. 1. The restrictive nature, isolation and challenges of rural life. As is the case in several of Iain Crichton Smith's short stories, Mother and Son is set in a village in a small rural community, and, as with the others, this allows Crichton Smith to explore the theme of the limitations, loneliness and challenges of this often isolated way of life. When we are introduced to John, his clothes are dripping and his cheeks are reddened by the wind and rain. This use of pathetic fallacy immediately establishes the inclement weather outside and suggests a hostile environment. We are told he has spent a cold, dismal afternoon in the fields, doing a monotonous task, suggesting that his daily life is dull. Once he is in the house, we realise that it is just as hostile an environment as it is outside. It's cold and dark, and as he makes a start on the domestic chores, other challenges of a small-minded village life emerge. John lives with his elderly, bedridden mother, hardly an ideal companion given her venomous, spiteful nature, but he is otherwise isolated. She insults and berates him, and it emerges he has no real friends. For example, he comments that Roddy Mason has gone the way the rest of the boys go, adding, "They all take a job, then they get together and laugh at me." These two statements convey clearly that John's choice, if it is indeed a choice, to remain at home in this small, suffocating setting, looking after his mother, has alienated him from other young men in the village. They mock him because he is unable to move on with his life, and the taunts of this small-minded villagers must be hurtful to John, just as his mother's barbs evidently are. 2. Relationships, and in this case destructive family ones. Toxic appears a perfect word to describe the tense relationship between the mother and son mentioned in the title of this short story. It's safe to say that John's relationship with his mother is portrayed as far from the loving mother-son bond that one might anticipate from the title of the story. It's clear, almost from the outset of the story, that there is no love lost between John and his ascetic mother, which perhaps begs the question as to why John stays there when it must be so tempting to leave. The potential reason for this is covered in the next theme. From the moment his domineering mother wakes up and sees that he is in the house, she bosses, criticises and insults him relentlessly. She appears consumed with bitterness, possibly due to being bedridden for 10 years, and she takes this out on her son continuously, taunting him about his lack of ability to do a job and even his possible mental health issues, which ironically could be caused, or at least exacerbated, by living with someone like her. On a few occasions throughout the story, he tries to rally and defend himself, but she simply ignores his comments and is undeflected from her mission to dominate and control him completely. While he has his flaws, John is portrayed as a character in this relationship who is more worthy of the reader's sympathy. We feel pity for him, that he is unfortunate enough to have a mother who fails to appreciate all that he does for her. It's not even that she's just undemonstrative and that she doesn't show him the love that a child might normally expect from his mother. It's far worse than that, because she actively pulls him down, saying things like, "Fat good, you'd be at a job." This has damaged John's confidence and self-esteem, adding to his emotional instability. The mother's criticism is so relentless and vicious, and John's mental anguish so convincingly conveyed to the reader, that we're encouraged to begin to think that it's almost inevitable that he will eventually attack his mother to put an end to the long-running conflict. However, perhaps to our slight surprise, he stops short of violence at the last minute, so the conflict remains unresolved and the ending of the story is ambiguous. Will nothing change? Will John snap and harm his mother soon? Or will he leave through that open door at some point in the future? 3. The conflict between duty and individual fulfilment. As mentioned briefly in the previous section about relationships, the question on all our minds is why John actually goes on looking after his mother when he could easily be forgiven for leaving her. Her treatment of him is extremely unpleasant. She expects him to look after her and keep the house and work, yet shows no appreciation. Moreover, she seems to take pleasure in finding fault with literally everything he says and does. Inevitably, this has had a significant impact on John's mental health over the 10 years he has been tending his bedridden mother. There are two images that are particularly effective in highlighting the impact of her words on him. Firstly, there's the metaphor describing the despair that shows in his eyes, the pain of the mute, suffering animal, which emphasises his powerlessness to express his thoughts and the emotional pain that he is experiencing. The second metaphor that conveys his distress is he felt himself in a dark cave from which there was never to be any escape. Here, the analogy of the dark cave underlines how completely trapped and isolated John feels, unable to see a way out. We have to assume that the reason John does not leave is that he is bound by a strong sense of duty to care for his mother, in spite of the lack of love that she shows him. This suggests he is a good man at heart, but everyone, no matter how kind-hearted and selfless, has their tipping point. And near the end of the story, we begin to get the feeling that John might be on the brink of snapping, as the years of nagging and being undermined have taken their toll. John appears to have wasted 10 years of his life caring for this ungrateful, selfish and spiteful old woman, and this has denied him the usual rites of passage experienced by most young men. While other young boys in the village have grown into young men, got jobs and enjoyed a social life, John has been restricted by his family situation. His mother's behaviour towards him is controlling and manipulative, and there appears to be a genuine risk that, as John fears, she could well end up breaking him emotionally, so that even if she dies, he won't be any good for anyone. John has allowed his sense of duty to ruin what should have been some of the best years of his life as a young man with few responsibilities and ties. Through the vivid presentation of John's dilemma, Crichton Smith makes clear to the reader that the personal cost of such loyalty and devotion can be very high indeed, such as the loss of personal freedom and a life devoid of fulfilment. Thank you for watching this video and hope you found it useful. See you next time. In other videos on Mother and Son, we look at an overview and key quotes from the story. If you found this or any of our other videos useful, it would be great if you could subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thanks for your support.